Happy New Year, everybody. Adam Mason from the Bearded Talk coming here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. In 2018, it means that you want to take a hold of your business and, as we're about to get started, a better person. So something kind of different. For the first few episodes of the Bearded Talk in 2018, I wanted to focus on episodes that would make us better people, better in our community, and ultimately better creatives. And so I decided that we were going to talk about some things that might make you cringe, might make you squirm, might make you feel embarrassed, but honestly, it will make us better in every way, like I talked about before. Like 20 years from now, we'll be so thankful that we heard perspectives and conversations like the one we're about to hear. And so we'll have an interview with Gary Williams, aka Master Williams. He runs a creative agency out of DC called Creative Theory. And we're going to talk about race and prejudice in the creative community. And then upcoming episodes, we're going to talk about sexism and sexual harassment in the creative industry. I've had second photographers who've worked for me actually been harassed on shoots. And I had no idea how to go about it or anything. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to build a community wherever you are, if there's nobody to hang out with, or how to tap in, how to pioneer something that can help sustain you and really put a map on where you live and help drive attraction there. So lots of fun episodes, but these ones are going to be more inward focused for us than our skill focused. And so for this first week, we're going to talk with Master Williams, aka Gary Williams, and we're just going to dive into his perspective. I absolutely love how gentle and kind he is, and honestly, he's still hopeful and optimistic, and I love that. So we're going to talk about that, and I would encourage you to finish this episode and reach out to him. Here we go. Gary, what's going on, man?
How you doing, man? How you doing?
Good, dude. It's so good to hear from you, man. It's good to put a face with the Instagram stories that I watch every day.
Right? In real life.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there was a time in my life where I listened to a ton of gospel music and I recognize some of the songs that you play in your snaps, and I'm just like, oh, that's so good. Like, and old school Kirk Franklin and Israel Houghton and stuff. So
yeah, I grew up on that. My dad's a pastor, and so I was always in church, and before I was even allowed to listen to secular music, I had my gospel and Kirk Franklin, DC Talk, and all those.
Wow.
in my CD player. That's so vintage. My
that's
CD
awesome.
player. But yeah, so that's kind of what I grew up on, and I find it even kind of just keeping me centered and aligned even today.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I'm not this creepy, but I mean, everybody wakes up in the morning and like checks their stories. I feel like that's like how you get ready for work in the day. You're like rolling in the car and you're like, all right, let me listen to this, or let me get my mind ready to make.
Yeah, definitely, man. I try to do a devotional. I have a little devotional book that I do in the mornings. And I've been like kind of just purposeful and on not checking my phone as soon as I wake up, and just really grabbing my devotional instead, and it's really helped me to kind of just live on purpose and live a little bit more aware of what's going on, not just around me, but within me.
Yeah.
So it's been tough because just so used to just waking up, first thing you do is you grab that phone, whether it's checking the time or checking your Instagram. But to be intentional about, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give this time, to my spirit and to myself. It's done wonders for me.
That's awesome, man. That's good to hear, dude.
Yeah.
It's I always tell people, and it's something I'm trying to get better at, is like we're in charge of our phone, and like we have to like stand strong in that and just be like, all right, like let me put you down. Like you don't control me. The things that I read on you do not control me. And like you gotta, it's Gary first,
Right.
Like you gotta be, especially in the morning, that's like precious time. Awesome. So tell me a little bit more. I know a little bit about you now, but are you originally from DC? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get here if you're not? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Virginia, kind of Fairfax area, which is 20 minutes west of DC. So, I mean, people would obviously say that's the DMV, you know. So I'm from this area, not necessarily DC proper, but like I said, I was only 20 minutes away, kind of growing up, and so I'm very familiar with the DC area. Of course, going on school field trips to DC and the museums and the monuments. And then as I got older, just coming to DC to really experience DC and go out and, you know, have fun and things like that. So I was always here in a sense. Might have not have been living here, but just close enough to where it kind of felt, you know, not like it was away or I was in another state when I visited here. So Virginia is home. I'll rep VA till I die. But DC is definitely very much home as well now. I've been living here for going on 6 years. I moved here pretty much after college. I got a job in DC. But I was living in DC. Living in Virginia and commuting to DC. And then finally I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I was actually living at home in my dad's house in Manassas. And that commute was just crazy. And so my mom was living in DC. And so I eventually just ended up kind of moving in with her and, you know, living with her in DC and just really fell in love with DC. DC has changed since I grew up, you know, since I was younger and doing the field trips at school. Like, it's a very different city now. And I had no idea that the creative scene was so strong here. And so when I tapped into that, I just fell in love with it. And it's really community over competition here. And that's what I really like about it. When you go into larger, you know, cities or markets, it's a lot of competition and it's kind of dog eat dog and cutthroat and which is, I understand it. Like, you know, when you're in those cities, you have to be kind of competitive and have that kind of, you know, aggressive hustle and attitude. And you need that, I would say, across the board, but it just feels like here people are much more willing to help and collaborate than to, you know, try to step over you or take advantage of you. And so, like I said, I fell in love with the city and the community and what the city was doing as far as to accept creatives and incorporate creatives into the city, and then you know, where I saw the city going. And so DC is definitely home now. Like Virginia forever, but I feel like it's like neck and neck right now. And I live here now, so well, that's actually a lie. I just moved out of DC. I just moved out of DC. I keep forgetting. I just moved out of DC over into Arlington, Virginia, which is literally across the bridge. Like,
yeah,
I could literally throw a rock from my window and hit DC. And so I still feel like I'm in DC, but with, you know, I got a little one coming in March. And we need a little bit more space and a little bit more bang for our buck. And so right now, Virginia was the move for me and my family. And so
that's awesome.
That's a little bit of backstory.
I love that. It's for people who don't know, and folks who listen to this podcast and know that I'm from DC. Like, it's just like any city. If you live in the proper, you know, area of that, it's like there's a sense of pride, you know, that comes with it. And it doesn't really mean much, you know, you're just closer to what we think is the action. But I could hear the regret in your voice. You're like, yeah, we're moving to Arlington, you know.
Yeah.
But it's what you got to do. You know, you got to do the best things for you. And
everything
you said was right.
Yeah. No regret. Like, it's more so like I just forgot. Yeah. At that moment, like, oh yeah, I'm in Arlington. Yeah. But honestly, it's so close, like, that I don't even feel like I'm out of the city.
That's awesome.
But eventually, you know, who knows where life will take us or business will take us, and we may move back into the city. But right now, you know, you got to do what's best for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you and I'm playing off a little bit of an Instagram that I saw, but have you ever thought, so and I feel like we haven't filled in any gaps, but you run a creative agency,
Yeah.
do all kinds of stuff, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Like, have you ever thought about New York or LA or Nashville or Austin?
Yeah. I actually just wrote in, I don't know if it was my
That's what
stories
I'm
or,
playing on. That's what I'm playing on.
yeah, it was my Instagram. And I just posted about this. I believe it was my last post. But anyway, yeah, so I contemplated earlier on my entrepreneurial journey moving to one of those major markets. New York was in the running. LA was definitely in the running. Austin was in the running. And, at the time, people were just telling me like, yo, you should try New York. You should try LA. You should try Austin. Austin was probably second on the list just because I had there was a company that I was working for called Locular, and the CEO of Locular, founder Joa, him and I became really good friends. He was like one of the first guys to really reach out to me and give me a chance on, kind of creating imagery for his company. And so we had a really good relationship from the jump. And Austin, I had been flying back and forth to Austin working with him, and I just like Austin was great. Like I loved it. I had business there. It was steady, and I was like, I could probably do this. It was warm. So I was really contemplating Austin, and then New York kind of came into the picture because a lot of clients that I was working with were out of New York, and I found myself going back and forth to New York. And people were like, well, that seems to be where your business is coming from. You could probably get a lot more business there. And so for a while, man, I really contemplated on making the move to one of those cities. LA was in the running. I had a friend out there I could have stayed with. And I just love the West Coast. I love the weather. I love being by the water. So, all of the three of those were in the running. But at the end of the day, I just felt first of all, I'm a big family guy. So I didn't really want to leave my family. A lot of my family is here, East Coast, most of my family. And so that was one of the major factors. But a second factor was I was getting work in these three cities all over the world, essentially from where I was at. And so to me, moving, I might have gotten a few more gigs, a few more clients, but at the same time, I was doing fine where I was at. And I was working in these larger markets and outside of the United States where I was at. And so, and I loved where I was at. I loved the community DC I love the people that, the friends that I made contact with. And I just wanted to build something here. And that was more important to me than going somewhere else and finding business or new clients. And so, definitely thought about it, and definitely almost made that move. But at the end of the day, like, again, home, being able to create where I was rooted, where I was, grew up, and being able to kind of help this community thrive and push this scene forward here in DC was a little bit more important to me than going somewhere else and making it, in a sense,
Yeah.
So definitely thought about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think for a lot of people, at least for me growing up, I didn't grow up by a big city. And so we see moving to the big city as like the step where we need to make things happen. But growing up kind of close to a big city, spending a lot of time in a big city, I wonder if, it's like you kind of have a realization that there are a lot of good things here. Like you said, you got your family, home, and as far as I'm hearing, and I know, I follow you for the past year or so, like you're getting work, you're getting work that makes you happy, as far as I know. And it's like I always tell my friends, like, the backup plan is not that bad. Like if you wanted to move to New York City, like the backup plan, stay in DC, close to my family with clients that I already love and get work. Like,
right.
That's not terrible,
Yeah, not
That's
terrible
awesome.
at all.
So tell me a little bit more. So you run an agency called Creative Theory with a team of wonderful people, and
Yes.
I follow all of them on Instagram, and I've learned a lot just about life and culture and how fun you guys are. And tell me a little bit more about what you guys do. What's some of your favorite things to work on?
So yeah, we are, I would say, 2 years, going on 2 years old now. And it's me and my business partner, Taman George, who's an amazing creative here in DC as well. Um, and then Paris, Cole, and then we have our lead video guy, who's Travell, and then we have our intern Clarice, who is attending Howard, and she's like super dope as well. But anyway, it's a small team. We're very nimble, and we've kind of found ourselves. Well, we started out like content creators, pretty much solely content creators. We would go out and pretty much do social narrative storytelling for brands, mostly with photography, sometimes copy, and eventually got into more video. And so that's where we started. But now we have found ourselves kind of in a diversity and inclusion space with our storytelling. And that all derived from a project that we did called Thrive, which was a magazine we did on our own with no kind of support. We just felt there was a need to kind of tell our own stories as African Americans. And we did this a little over a year ago was when we started the magazine. And it was out of kind of, I don't want to say protest, but at the time there was a lot of social injustice was kind of at the forefront, as it still is today. But there were just the killing of Freddie Gray in Baltimore and things of that nature was just huge right now. And protests were going on. Black Lives Matter movement was coming up and to the forefront. And so we understood that we weren't necessarily the protest type, although that's needed. We just felt that we wanted to do something and we wanted to make an impact. And we felt that we should use our expertise, what we were good at, to do that. And so we decided to highlight people that we knew of color in our circles. We decided to highlight these folks, tell their stories from our perspective. And we came up with this magazine called Thrive. And we highlighted, I think, 12 individuals. One is Desiree and Adrian Radford, Othello, all of these amazing creatives in the city that were of color. So we did this magazine. We literally shot the images. We wrote the stories. We designed the layout, everything, with no help, no backing. But eventually, as we got to the end of the magazine, we started sharing it, of course, with our friends. It was only supposed to be a digital piece. We were just going to put it on a Squarespace link and send it out to our friends and family and, put it on Twitter, yada, yada, yada. But as we began to share it with our friends, people just really were like, you have to print this thing. Like, this is amazing. It should be print. And one of our clients, Union Market, we shared it with them and they were like, we need this at the market. You guys have to print this. Obviously, we didn't have a budget to print, but we have a good relationship with them and they wanted it and they thought it was very necessary at the time. And so they offered to print copies for us. And that's how it became a physical magazine. And then we shared it with our friends at Google here in DC. And they were, of course, they loved it and they felt like they wanted to be a part of it as well. And so they threw us a launch party on their rooftop here in DC for it, which was incredible. And then they were like, we need one of these for our company. And that's how we ended up doing a second edition, and it was Google focused. So they just set us out on a mission to basically do the same thing, but with Google employees that work in their digital coaching kind of area. And so we flew around I think, I want to say 5 different states in a week to highlight, I want to say 12 women. I could be wrong on the number, but 12 women in the digital space that work with Google. and launched that magazine at Essence Fest with them. So right now we seem to be moving into the more kind of brand culture, diversity and inclusion space, even consulting with clients on how to be inclusive, how to be diverse within your company culture. What do you do? You know, a lot of times it's just about hitting your numbers and hiring, you know, meeting your quota of diverse people,
right.
And not necessarily understanding, you know, those people that you're hiring, how to communicate with these people, how to interact, what to say, what not to say, you know, and that's very much so important. It's not just about, we have 3 Black people on our team, or we have 3 Indian, or, you know, 3 Spanish. It's
right.
not just about the numbers. It's how do we really include these people into our culture, you know, and how do we just understand them a bit more, and once you understand them, and then you'll begin to work better and collaboratively with these people. But if it's just a numbers thing, if it's just let's get these people in here because they're diverse, then you're not really helping the cause, right?
Right.
So you have to understand these people, and we have to understand each other. It just will help. You know, there's no sense of us working together in the same space if we don't understand, or if we aren't knowledgeable about each other's culture. And if you're not knowledgeable, if you don't understand, then of course you're going to probably say something that's going to offend somebody, or do something that's going to offend somebody because you don't understand, you're not familiar, you know, right. What I'm saying? And so that's where we kind of come in, and we found ourselves really telling those stories and consulting with companies on how to not just hire these people, but to really include these people. It's not just a buzz term now, diversity and inclusion, but how do we really implement these policies or these ideas into the workplace to where it is working and it's effective?
Yeah, I love that. It sounds too like just the entrepreneurial side of things, of like you guys did something kind of out of your own pocket, if you will, out of your own budget, out of your own time. And, you know, Google and Union Market, if you're in DC, it's a big deal. And they're like, hey, let's pick it up.
Yeah, I saw a quote from a good friend of mine, Joshua Kissy. He's big in New York. He's just launched a diverse stock photography company called Tonal. But he was speaking at an Airbnb shindig, and he said the greatest work you'll produce is the work you do for free and yourself. I think it was either for free or yourself. But that's really true. This work that we just decided to do for ourselves and has really opened doors for us. And a lot of times I think creatives can forget about themselves, you know, when it's really, because obviously you're working for yourself and you have bills and you need clients, you need money coming in, you know, each month. And sometimes that hustle and that grind it allows us to forget about ourselves and forget about our own creative ideology and perspective, and really forget about creating for ourselves, because that's where it all started. You know, we started out creating for ourselves. We didn't have any clients when we were born, or when we got into this thing, and it was really about your vision, our vision, what we wanted to put out into the world, what we wanted to create. And that was probably our most fulfilling work, and usually is, because it comes from the most honest and true place. And so a lot of times we can forget about ourselves and forget about our art, forget about what we're trying to convey to the world. And a lot of times those things that we set out to do from our hearts and our souls are the most rewarding work, and can open some of the biggest doors for us. And that's what this magazine has done. It's kind of ushered us into this space in the tech world, which is in much need of diversity and inclusion. Probably one of the main industries that is just struggling with that. But they, like I said, they've been. You look from Google to Apple to Facebook, all of these tech companies. They are right now. They are making efforts to diversify and be inclusive. But that all came from them being outed, people having to come out and say, this is not being done. Like there's still little diversity in the tech space. And so now there's kind of an uptick in these tech companies trying to be more inclusive and diverse.
Yeah. It feels like it's one of those things where people, and we'll get into that, but maybe that's one of the signs of like the right thing to do is how somebody responds to that critique. And you say,
right.
hey, Apple, have you noticed this? Like, this is a theme. Do you believe in this? And they go, oh, wow, let's turn the ship a different way. Let's get on board. Let's do this. And and I hate the fact that it's like, let's get on board for people, but it's moving the needle one way or another.
Right.
So that's something, I've seen that a lot in the tech industry, and I used to work for Apple, and I fully get the kind of lack of diversity there, and but everybody's working on it in the tech space, at least that I've noticed. I want to talk a little bit more about prejudice and racism in the creative industry, and we kind of talked this a little bit of a pre-show, but I know a sliver of it in kind of bigger productions. So, as far as like movies, I know a lot of different movies have gotten pushback and different nominations and how they're graded, even from like the movie Get Out being put in the comedy space. And I know Jordan Peele didn't necessarily care too much, and then he was like, oh, I understand why, it's not taking them seriously. And all the way back to like the 1800s with blackface, which was plays for white people, and they would have white people play African Americans, to which I'm like, what? And they would paint their faces, and so I guess I want to just start as like in your industry, as far as in a more content creation industry, and feel free to, if there are other examples, and I know there's a lot in fashion as well, like what, if any, did you guys get any pushback on Thrive? Or have you experienced anything like that, or have friends have experienced maybe pushback, or they didn't get hired and you couldn't really pinpoint it, but it felt like, I think this is because we're black or because we're people of color?
That's
a loaded question. Sorry, Gary.
No, it's all good. I'm just trying to think of specific instances for you. It's definitely has happened to me, not necessarily directly, which is, but very subtle.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to one instance, and this was 2014. Early again on my entrepreneurial quest, I got a gig with working with Cam Newton, and it was for his cologne, Drakkar, that he was, I guess, coming out with at the time.
Yeah. And
L'Oreal was the company behind it, and I got hired through an agency, of course, to do this kind of social campaign with Cam Newton for this cologne called Drakkar. And L'Oreal was the overarching kind of, they were the ones who were facilitating this whole thing and putting the money into it and everything. Anyway, so this was a big project for me. I ended up having to hire like 8 of my friends to make it happen. We were shooting videos, like Instagram videos. We were doing photos. We were doing a 60-second promotional video. It was just a lot. Right. And like I said, I had to hire a bunch of people. I had to hire DP, I had to hire like 2 cameramen. I had to hire a grip. I had to hire a sound guy. Pretty much I hired everybody, and I was kind of the creative director behind it, and I shot some photos as well.
Nice.
But I was kind of the guy, just kind of pulling the strings and things like that. So anyway, it was all in New York. I mean, in Baltimore. That's where Under Armour's headquarters is. It had nothing to do with Under Armour, but I think Cam was affiliated with Under Armour. So
yeah,
anyway,
he's sponsored by them. So
sponsored by them, right? So we did it in Baltimore at the Four Seasons. It was an all-day shoot. We're in this Four Seasons hotel room. I got my guys. Like, it's full production.
Yeah,
full production. The clients on, like the agency's there, the clients there, L'Oreal's there. We had the monitor set up so they could see what we're shooting. Everything's going well. Like, they're loving it. The client's loving it. They're seeing what we're producing. The day goes great, right? And then we get to the post-production process. And we do like a couple rough, like just edits to get them so they can kind of see concept and whatever, and see how it's looking. And we send that over. And they come back, they weren't happy. They didn't like the way it looked. They didn't like the color grading. Mind you, this had not been edited at all. It was literally just
a rough cut.
Rough cut, just, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they came back like just extremely negative. And then so we're like, okay, well, this is a rough cut. Like, this hasn't been color graded. Like, it's literally just so you can see, get a feel for, what we captured and how things would be sequenced, yada, yada, yada. So they said, okay, and let us know when you get a clip color graded and finalized, send it over to us. We did that. It looked great on our end. The agency that hired us thought it looked great. We ship it to L'Oreal. Again, they come back. This is terrible. This is not what we, signed up for. We were expecting. They were at the end of it. They said they were expecting TV quality videos for Instagram. Mind you, Instagram downgrades everything.
Right.
Mind you, you don't need TV quality for Instagram, which all of this stuff, like, we went over in pre-production meetings. Like, they wanted us to shoot it on a red, and we told them that is ridiculous. This is for Instagram. You don't need a red camera. Like, we'll shoot it on C100s. That's totally fine. Right. They agreed to it. And so anyway, we get to the post-production part, and it was literally a back and forth for like 2 months. And there was one instance where we had a phone call. It was me, it was the agency, and then it was L'Oreal. And the conversation, they weren't directly saying they didn't like the work because I was black, but in the undertones, you could tell they were they were saying that I wasn't professional. They were saying that I was an amateur. They were saying the work looked like, I'm trying to remember the correct statements they made. Anyway, it was just very much so disrespectful and demeaning. And, I had to, I'm going to say I had to take it, but I'm not a combative and confrontational type of guy. And for me, it's not worth it in that instance to bark back. And I knew the work that I did. I knew the work that my team did. The agency knew the work that we did. The agency, again, was on my side from the jump.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like I didn't need to fight for this one. Like, it's just, I knew that I did great work. The agency was happy with the work that I did. And so it was only L'Oreal who was kind of like, who was utterly disgusted if you took it from them about the work. And so anyway, the undertones there were more so than we just don't like the work, because when you were there on the set, like, everything was good. They were like saying it looked great, and there were no issues on set.
Right.
And so the back end, all of a sudden, it's not what you like. and I have no way of really proving that it was because I was black or, and the crazy thing is my team was super diverse. I mean, I was the creative director, but like my lead video guy they were all my friends that had been in the creative industry that I knew could do the job. My sound guy was white. My lead video guy was white. My second video guy was Asian. My grip was white. My photo assistant was black. So it was a very much diverse crew. But anyway, like I said, I have no way of proving that it was because it was a racial thing. But
yeah,
you just know, like working in the industry and being black, just period, you can sense when things are racial,
right?
You can sense undertones, and so
it's like like I said, like the work isn't necessarily even what they were judging per se, but how they reacted to you,
right?
Like, and this is part of my recognizing my privilege, is like nobody has ever talked to me that way,
right.
Like, and and I think your work is insanely good, and at least everything I've seen, and it's like, it's just how does somebody react, and that's the question. It's like, would they talk to somebody else who is white the same way they talk to Gary, And it's also like it's easy to hate and undermine on a phone call versus in person,
Yep.
And it's just like there's a sphere, and it's one of those things, like you can't prove it, and either way, like you were disrespected either way, like, so it's just like, come on guys, like what are you doing? And and again, it's like, would you speak to you the same way? And
I mean, even after we got off the phone, the agency called me and they were extremely apologetic because they even felt it. They were just like super apologetic for the way they were talking to me, and they just were reiterated, like, we're on your side, like, don't worry about this, yada, yada, yada. So, that felt good to have that, because the agency hired me. So I could care less what L'Oreal said. As long as the people that hired me were happy,
right?
I was cool. But again, like I said, they immediately apologized, kind of on L'Oreal's behalf. Not even on L'Oreal's behalf, but they apologized just for having, because I had to kind of sit through that and endure it.
Right. That's like, that's insane.
And so again, like I said, to me, it was kind of water off my back. I don't necessarily let those things really bother me because I understand it's been a part of my life. But at the same time, like I said, I had the agency on my back, and they were the ones paying me. They were the ones who hired me. So I could care less what they said. But it still was like, ouch, like, like it still stung in a sense of like, I mean, I'm human. So, no matter how confident I am in my work, to hear somebody talk to me in that manner it stung. But again, I didn't let it really bother me. Got off the phone, shook it off. On to the next one.
Right, exactly.
But with Thrive, we had no pushback.
That's awesome.
With Thrive, and I can't say, in these 2 years, I don't recall any instances where we have had any pushback because of our race. But again, I think that speaks to who we are, as well as to our clients. Like, people reach out to us knowing I'm black, Taman's black, Paris black. Like, they know what they're getting into. So I don't think it would be crazy for them to reach out to us and then, kind of push back on certain things.
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, I would say most of our clients are white. That I'm trying to think. Where our contacts are usually, this is the crazy thing, our contacts are usually African American or black. And then,
listen, I can get you in. Let's do this.
Right. No, it's literally, that's how it is. Our contacts are usually black or diverse of some nature. And then, we get to the other people, and they're usually, white. And that's another thing. It's like we, as I would say, Black people, any race, non-white, oftentimes we are hired to, it'll be like, we're the last ones to get called, right? Mm-hmm. So there's like a project and people need a photographer. They'll call me, they'll call, Taman, they'll call somebody for that. But we have no input from the jump. We have we're not at the table, a seat at the table. So we don't get any input on the creative direction. We don't get briefed, necessarily on, the totality of the project. It's just, we have this project. This is how we want to shoot it. We think you'd be great to shoot it.
Yeah.
Right. And so for Taman and I, when we decided to create this business and build this business, it was really out of necessity that we felt we wanted to be at the table. We worked in the creative spaces as entrepreneurs on our own for a long time. And we felt that, again, we were the last ones getting called. But during these jobs that we would get, we would have suggestions or we would have ideas that could have made the projects better. And we felt like if we could get, to the table before the last call, then we could have a greater impact. And we knew that we had ideas and visions and perspectives that could help these brands or companies that we were working with. And so we were just like, okay, we're not really necessarily getting a seat at the table like this. Let's just build our own thing. Let's create our own thing, create our own narrative, tell our own stories. And that way we can kind of maneuver ourselves and get a seat at that table, if not build our own table. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. Like, let's just build our own table. Let's control our own narrative. Let's inject our perspective and our ideology into these projects that we get together. And so that's kind of where creative theory started. It's we need to be not just the last ones to call on these projects, but we need to be at the table when these projects are being discussed. I mean, you think about the Pepsi debacle with
Jenner,
right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, if there was a diverse or Black person, a person of color at that meeting table when they were going over this storyboard or whatever, they would have been able to say, you know what, guys, that's probably not a good idea, or let's rethink this, Yeah. But I don't know who they had at the table. They could have had somebody there of color and they just missed the ball, but I doubt it, And so a lot of times these ideas are being shaped and molded by people who aren't us and who don't know the culture necessarily. They're appropriating the culture. They want to be involved in the culture. They want to be included in the culture, but they have no knowledge about the culture.
Yeah. And
so they're just going off what they think, which is based on no foundation of experience. And then that's how you get these commercials, like these Pepsi commercials and these other things that happen, because nobody's there to check them.
Yeah.
And so again, the diversity and inclusion it's great, and you look now and you see all these tech companies and big major companies pushing for diversity and inclusion, and all that's great, but it makes little difference if they're not including us at the table.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And in a situation like Pepsi, like a lot of big brands, it's honestly, even if they had a person of color at the table, how much say does that person have?
Exactly.
As the head decision maker. And then two, like, the reason, and I feel like and this is kind of what my perspective is, just like, I feel like I'm an ambassador to white people who want to do the right thing, but don't know. Right. And the honesty is, diversity and inclusion, it's like Gary, you're not a check mark, you're not some kind of quota that I have to meet, like you're a person. And, having just people in the building, at the table, in the meeting, as far up as we can go, provides perspective and awareness. Right. And this is outside of the, the bigger issues at play, but even in the workplace, it's just like, like, guys, like if we want to have perspective and be a more well-rounded brand, and, you know, and Pepsi, like, you know, they always say like good intentions pave the road to hell.
Right.
Like it's a good intention. Like it's a good idea. But you know, somebody like if you were in that meeting, you could be like, guys, it's not the right time. It's a hot time right now. Or
right.
Let's pick somebody else. Or you know, like it feels too good for this to be real. We need something a little bit more somber, you know, or like you know, and somebody. And that's something too that I've had to recognize, and a lot of people don't know, is the beauty of privilege is that you don't have to recognize that you have it.
Right.
And people in those Pepsi meetings think like, man, I went to Harvard, or I went to, you know, whatever, went to SCAD or a good art school, and they're like, I'm a baller at this. Let's do this. And it's like, you know, you just look silly like they did. And you know, it's I don't it's tough.
It is tough. And like you said, there's the privilege thing is, I think you nailed it. It's like the beauty of privilege is that you got, you know, I'm gonna say you guys, I don't want to put you in that, but you really don't have to be aware that you have it, you know. That's so unfortunate, because it's just blinding, and then it leaves no room for growth or education. You know, and, you know, we don't have that privilege. Like it's just, we don't have it. And I doubt, you know, we will never have that. It's just from, you know, we can go into, systemic, issues and down that road. But I mean, we all know from the jump, it's just, we've been dealt the bad hand. And no doubt it's a lot has changed. I don't want to say like, you know, we're still, you know, 200 years ago or whatever, but a lot has changed. But as you know, there's still a lot of change to happen. And that's not just with Black people. That's with women. That's with all minorities, you know, the LGBT community. Like there's a lot that has happened, but there's so much more that needs to happen. And we see that every day, you know, and especially with this, you know, I don't want to get political, but with this administration, it's just, it just seems like tensions are higher.
Absolutely.
Nowadays. And, but again, it's things like this, what you're doing, you know, it's things like what we're doing as far as with creative theory. And it's people like us, who will kind of pivot the conversations, and who will be the leaders, you know, on doing the groundwork to change the narrative and to change perspectives and to kind of, you know, continue these conversations. Because if we're not having the conversations, then we're definitely not going in the right direction. So we to continue to have these conversations and continue to talk to one another and try to understand. You know, I don't necessarily think we have to agree on everything. You know, it's not about agreeing, but it's more so about the empathy and understanding one another. You know, I don't expect you to have the same views that I have. I mean, you grew up totally different than I grew up. You know, I don't expect us to have the same cultural experience, or for you to understand, you know, why I do some of the things that I do, or for me to understand why you know, necessarily get it. But I can respect it, you know, because that's you. That's a part of you. That's kind of that's you, you know. And we're all, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have different experiences. We all have different backgrounds. So for me to just expect you to get everything would be crazy. But for me to expect you to respect me and to just try to understand a little bit more, I don't think that's too far-fetched.
Yeah, me neither.
And vice versa, right? And vice versa. So a lot of times I think that conversation is, it gets skewed in the sense of like, I need you to understand everything that I've gone through, or everything that I've been through, or everything that I am. And that's, in a sense, that's kind of unrealistic, you know, because you haven't experienced these things. So how are you going to really grasp the magnitude of racism that I feel? Because you're not me, you know.
Right.
But what you can do And what I can do, vice versa, is just listen to you, understand, and respect my feelings, respect your feelings, and, just try to be a better person and more knowledgeable about my culture and vice versa, your culture.
Yeah.
And we can live together in a harmony without agreeing on everything.
Yeah.
But we can't live together in harmony if we don't respect one another and respect each other's backgrounds. And you see that even today,
Yeah.
It's more so a lack of respect than it is a lack of understanding to me.
100%. And that's what, kind of like joked about with the Pepsi commercials, that's what feels, or even with the L'Oreal gig, it's how they spoke to you. It's the respect. Like if somebody said, "Hey Gary, I wish it had," if they had stuck to the product and said, "Hey, I wish it felt like this," or "I wish the vibe was like this," or I thought the mood boards that we created, whatever pre-production we did, but it's not. It's the disrespectful undertones, and it's like, there's all kinds of things, and people. I was not going to talk about this, but like the history of African Americans in sports, and it's like for the white man's entertainment, and and just like now I feel I thought it was more somewhat neutral, or at least in that's the beauty, right? But like Kaepernick protests, and my parents are like, "Why is he protesting? Why is he being disrespectful?" And I was like, "He took a knee." Like at the very basis, I'm like, let the guy do what he wants to do. But I told my mom why, he was doing it, and I was like, he's not being disrespectful. He was trying to bring a spotlight to a place that has been covered in darkness by the systems around him. And and
again, and not to disrespect, I'm not disrespecting.
It's all good.
But that again speaks to privilege. Yeah, right?
Exactly.
They in that moment, they're not even realizing that is privilege. Like they, he said it a million times, what he's doing it for, the reason why he's doing it for, it has nothing to do with the flag or the country or the, disrespecting. Like it's really to bring awareness, like you said, and highlight these injustices that are going on.
Yeah.
And, he's done so much for like troops, and, he's given so much of his own money to like these other causes, and to privilege is being able to hear this man say he's not disrespecting the flag and he supports the troops, yada, 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 and overlook that and still feel, slighted.
Right.
And so that, again, that's part of it. It's like not, like you said, it's seeing us, but not hearing us. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's seeing us, but not hearing us. And so it's, like you said, it's, we still have a long way to go. We've come so far, but, there's still a long way to go. But I am encouraged. I am confident that we are going in the right direction. Even with this administration in office, I believe that it will do more good for the country than it will do harm in the end. It seems crazy now, and it is crazy. But at the end of the day, I believe this next generation, our generation, is going to turn the tide. And it's already happening, right? And you can kind of see the wave starting to turn over. And so, but we got to keep fighting and keep having these conversations, and keep just making strides forward, and to better these relationships and to understand each other and respect each other even more so.
Totally. No, I totally agree. And it's like, it sounds so silly, and this is part of what we talked about, but it's like, who wouldn't want to get behind loving people just in general,
This is like a general,
giving everybody respect,
that boggles my mind. I don't understand that. But again, like I said, we could go. It's a systemic issue, man. It's so deeply rooted into this country's DNA that I don't ever think it will be totally gone. You know.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's just rooted in the DNA, and as you know, it's taught. Racism is taught. It's not something you're born with, you know. And so it's just unfortunate, but I do think it will definitely come a time where, I mean, it is now. It's not the majority now, you know, but it'll dwindle. It'll keep dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. You'll always have you'll always have racists on both sides. Yeah. You know. Yeah. You'll always have that. Just because, like I said, it's taught. Yeah. It's passed down. And you know, people will always have their views and will pass those views down. But like I said, it'll dwindle. And it's dwindling now, and it will keep dwindling, because at the end of the day, like you said, why is it so hard to just love someone? Like, you know, as a human being, to just have empathy and compassion for someone. And it's just to not be able to do that, to know that you're a human being and to hate on another human being for the color of their skin is a concept that I cannot grasp. Yeah. Totally. But I understand where it came from. Yeah. And so it's just like I said, it's going to take these conversations and people like you and I, who obviously are different backgrounds, different skin colors, but you know, you reached out to me. You're like, let's have this conversation. I'm like, yes, let's do it.
I was so nervous emailing you. I was like, this is so crazy, but you know.
No, this is what it's all about. Like, there is no prejudice bone in my body. I mean, I grew up in the church. My dad, I grew up in a pretty diverse church. They're mostly white, but it was probably like, I'd say 70-30. But you know, when you grow up Christian, you know, you're taught to just, the bottom line is love. Like, at the end of the day, you love one another. You treat each other like you want to be treated. The crazy thing is that I even experienced racism in church. You know, and it's everywhere. And that's the crazy thing. A lot of this racism is rooted in Christianity, which I don't even know how that happens. If you read the same Bible I'm reading, that, you know, there's no room for that. Yeah. There's no space for that. But again, systemic issues that no, we don't have time to go into. But it's, like I said, it's deeply rooted into America's DNA. And when you have something that's this deeply rooted, it would seem to take several lifetimes for things to equal up. Yeah. I don't ever think I sound so, I don't ever think equality will happen. Right. I don't want to say that I don't ever think it'll happen, but I just think it's going to take, I don't know if I will see total equality in my lifetime. Right. And I don't know if my kids will see it in their lifetime. Yeah. You know, because that's how deeply rooted the issue is. Yeah.
It'll take a long time to deconstruct, you know.
It'll take a long time, man. A long time. Yeah. But like I said, we're making strides in the right direction, and so I'm hopeful. Yeah. I'm hopeful for sure.
Gary, I love your hopeful attitude, man. Like, it's so good to hear that, you know, like, you're optimistic about moving the needle one step at a time, or even somebody from my place is, I'm like, man, I wish we have to do more. Like, why can't we, you know, fix this? And, you know, it's just I have a restorative nature where I just like, hey, let's fill the holes. Let's fix things. You know, it sounds, my parents think I'm a hippie, but I'm like, let's just live in unity. Let's do this. But where's, you know, I love the attitude. And I think the attitude comes through all of your Instagram and your social media. And like you said, even putting out things like Thrive and placing yourself in other communities and tech companies and stuff like that.
Tech space,
Yeah. So What is one tip that you could give people in the creative industry from, folks like me who at the very basic, I'm just a white photographer that shoots weddings. I've been trying to make my strides. I got an email from a bride one time that she was like, "Hey, do you do interracial weddings?" And I was like, "Why not?" Like I had no kind of mindset to it. But then after I posted it and I got the emails from the haters, I was like, "Oh, this is why people were asking if I did this kind of work."
You got emails from haters?
Yeah. So yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
We'll talk about it after we end the show.
Yeah. We have to talk about that. Yeah.
So it's just like I had no idea. But what's something there are all kinds of stuff, and if you go on where a lot of creatives are hanging out, and not necessarily brands and stuff like that, but if you look at Pinterest, like I've never seen an African American on Pinterest, and but that's like where a lot of people are hanging out, and it's like I know there are people that listen to this, they're like, oh, what could I do? What could be my next step? And I want to put it in this bundle, be like, if you're going to try and do something, don't politicize it, don't put a megaphone around it, but just be open that you're humble and you're trying to do what's best. But what's your tip that you think that can help out?
So you asked me for a tip that can help out with what? Really?
Just for creatives to maybe that's people of privilege, white people in the U.S. What can we do honestly to help do the right thing, to do the better thing, and use maybe our creative skills to move that forward? Okay.
I mean, there's a million things. No, I honestly, man, I'm trying to think of some like very deep philosophical like thing that people can take away, but honestly, that's just not me. And for me, it's really just empathy, man.
Yeah.
Like, understanding that we, again, like I said, we are all humans at the end of the day. You breathe the same air I breathe.
Yeah.
You bleed like I bleed. It's red blood, You have family, You want to be loved just as much as I want to be loved. And you want, your family to do well just as much as I want my family to do well, And, you want health and you want wealth. And, we all, at the end of the day, want the same things out of life, right? There's those things that across the board are foundational in life. And as humans, we all want those things. And empathy is so important when you talk about race relations and these conversations. And if we are not able to empathize, if we're not able to at least see a person's, if we're not able to just see a person and see them as human and understand that, they might not be 100% like me in a sense. Yeah, they grew up different. Yeah, they different skin color. But at the end of the day, they are human just like me.
Yeah.
And they have a family just like me. And they want the same things that I want out of life.
Yeah.
If we can't start there, we're not going to be able to have a conversation. We're not going to be able to collaborate. We're not going to be able to live or work together. Because if I see you as anything other than a human being, then there's just no movement there. We're at a dead end because we can't communicate. And so I would just say empathy in your life and in your work is so important. And just trying to understand one another. You don't have to understand everything. I don't think that's possible, but an attempt. And if you don't understand, at least respect,
Right.
And I would say to creatives, like whatever work you're doing, make sure it's coming from an honest, organic, authentic. I know those are buzzwords, but make sure it's real, and make sure you are getting all perspectives
Yeah.
on your work,
Yeah.
and to include people that are not like you into your work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big thing we try to do, because the world is so much bigger than us. And we as creatives, we have a responsibility to show the world as it is, through our own lenses and through our own brushstrokes or whatever it is. Our perspective on the world, I would say, is most important to the world.
Absolutely.
And so we have to make sure we are doing it justice and really creating work that speaks, that honestly speaks to us first, and then can speak to the world. And so just be mindful. I would say, I don't know, I'm giving so many things, but be mindful.
All right.
No. Be mindful of your surroundings, of others in your work.
Yeah.
And for us as African Americans, as Black people, we have to really take charge of our own narrative and really tell our own stories, because too many times people that don't look like us are telling our stories, and are skewing our stories, and they don't understand our stories. And so for us, it is important at Creative Theory to control our own narrative, and to tell beautiful stories about beautiful people. And that's not just Black people. Yes, that is a focus for us because we are Black, but everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And if we can learn more about each other, the better off we'll be in the long run. And so just be honest, be a good person, and make sure your work is honest as well.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that so much, dude. I'll make sure to link your Instagram, because that's my favorite place to see your work, in the show notes, man, and hopefully people will get some follows for you. But
it's
seriously,
all good, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love it. It's like your work is really good. Like that's, but something I try to tell people, and I've had to learn too, is that it's Gary first, work second. And like your personality is also really fun. I'm like, oh, this guy would be cool. Like I feel we have similar communities and stuff like that. So thank you so much for being on, and would love to have you come back sometime. Maybe we'll get Simone on there. And
man, definitely. I hope this is a good conversation for you.
That was awesome.
I hope it resonates with your audience.
Yeah, or we're going to get some emails. So thank you so much. Right.
I know. Oh gosh, I hope we don't get those, but it's all good, man. That comes with the territory, right?
That's right. That's right, man.
So I appreciate it, man. I think what you're doing is amazing. And I would say keep it up, man. Continue to have these conversations and be open to these conversations, and hopefully one day we can meet IRL in real life.
That's right, man. That's right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Gary.
No problem, man. Thank you.
Whew. I know that was a heavy one, guys, and that was my goal with this. Is we wanted a few episodes at the beginning of the year that would, honestly, we're just going to open up our eyes and hopefully spur us on to do bigger and better things. But I hope that inspires you, gives you hope. If Gary is optimistic, I'm optimistic. What can we do? Who can we give a platform to that doesn't have a platform? What megaphone can we give to somebody who doesn't have a megaphone? Where can we shine light on places that we haven't seen or aren't being seen in our communities? Like, that's what we have to do. Take the missions trip, talk to the neighbor, go serve at the Boys and Girls Club, maybe do portraits at a nonprofit or something like that. You just get in that place that is a little uncomfortable and just be honest. Be like, hey, I want to photograph people who don't like me. I want to tell stories of people who don't look like me. Who do you want to be 50 years from now? What do you want your work to look like? And it's okay if you have a lot of your work that represents the things you're passionate about, weddings or storytelling or calligraphy or whatever you do. But how can we use our gifts as storytellers? Because we're the only ones. The people who aren't telling stories are bad storytellers. So what can we do to show beauty and hope and inspiration in these times? So I just want to thank you. I'm not going to plug anything at the end of this episode other than just go follow Gary, because he's incredible. His Instagram is in the show notes, or at Master Williams, which is amazing if you know Fresh Prince. And he's just a great guy. So follow him, say hi, tell him what you thought of the episode. And I bet he'd be open to questions. Even, be gentle. But if you want to talk more about this, either of us are open for questions. And we would love for this to be something that is different for you in 2018 and for life. So thank you so much for listening to The Bearded Talk. We're getting serious in 2018. Thanks so much.